Welcome to the Drop the Needle podcast, your backstage pass to the corporate jungle. I'm your host, Jim Alstott, and here, industry titans step up to the mic, sharing their epic journeys. We're hitting the high notes and the low notes of their careers, creating a symphony of success. This isn't just another interview show, it's where truth bombs are dropped and secrets are revealed. So grab your conductor's baton because who knows, this just might help you compose the next huge hit of your career. Are you ready? Let's go.
That's right.
Awesome. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Drop the Needle podcast. I'm your host, Jim Alstott, and I'm so happy you all decided to join us. Today, we have as our guest an author of several books, including The Oneness Model, a host of the Butterfly Forecast podcast, and of course, she has been a medical intuitive for over 29 years. We have the great pleasure of having Miss Julie Burns Walker in the studio. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much, Jim. It is a pleasure to be with you.
Well, thank you for making the time. I know your schedule is crazy busy, and this is quite an honor, and I'm very happy you made the time for us.
Such a pleasure to be here.
So I knew that this was a must meet, you being the must meet, because our mutual friend Jennifer Weigel said, "Oh,
Yes.
you've got to meet Julie Burns. You got to meet Julie Burns Walker. She's great. You got to have her on the show." And I said, "If you're saying that, then I have to do it." So I reached out. Yeah, she's got such wonderful things to say about you and your gifts and your demeanor. And in our phone call that we had prior to the show, and I guess it goes back a couple of weeks now because you went out of town almost the next day from our conversation and just returned. So again, thank you. It was amazing when we had our conversation. It just started flowing. We were talking about the oneness model because initially the show's pillars, we have 4 different pillars that we adhere to on the show, but it was, okay, well, what is it that I can offer you? You were essentially wanting to know how this could make sense for our listeners and me. And it was very interesting that it just fell into place right away because of a holistic approach that you take in your life, I suppose. And then the Oneness Model book. And then, of course, or I shouldn't say book, I should say series, because it's more than a book, it's a series. And then the whole fact that you've got this little gift being a medical intuitive, which is amazing. So I'd like to start with this, the why behind the writing of the Oneness Model series.
Well, the why part comes from people themselves. I never sought this work. I was born with all the modalities of my brain, like synesthesia, functioning all at the same time. So everything fires off instead of separately. So right away, as a very small person developing, what I noticed about people is not what they talked about. So I wondered, am I supposed to talk about what I see or what people tell me I'm supposed to see?
Interesting.
And so I really grew accustomed to noticing that people don't really have the same reason for having the same reactions or symptoms. And so, for example, if I had sisters, which I did, they were my first human beings to observe on a regular basis. And if I had 3 sisters with 3 stomach aches, I noticed 3 different causes of those stomach aches.
Huh.
So now fast forward over time, I became a kinesiologist and I studied different schools of kinesiology. I didn't want to be the weird lady. I didn't want to be the person that looked at people and people were like, oh no, don't look at me. I wanted to just be helpful. So after I got certified in all these different schools, my professors kept borrowing me after class to look at their mystery patients. So really, that's how I became a medical intuitive. They called me that because it had already been established as a term.
Wow.
So the oneness model really came when I got too many requests for too many sessions, and I'm just a person, and I'm not an institute or a clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, what if I create a little tool so people can see themselves? Then they won't need an appointment with me.
Right.
That'll be amazing. And then what if that starts to spread and now people have a language for what's really going on? So that's what really initiated my interest in creating something simple but profound.
That's so interesting because even right before we started recording the show, I said, I was intrigued by what I started reading because it looked like an instruction manual, a blueprint of what to do. I swear, I even said that it was like a blueprint. And so I was reading the sections, and I found myself going, okay, wait a second, go back and reread that again. And then it's like, okay, okay, go back and do that. So I kept rereading it and going, oh, okay. And so I was really intrigued, or anxious, I should say, to chat with you, because even in the overview, when you talk about the cores, when there's the three sections
kind of dynamics of a core. Yeah.
Yes. I was just like, holy cow. Yeah. And then we talk about the points, and I just was kind of wondering, well, you know what? I should stop and maybe let you explain that, because you're the one who wrote the book. So you're the expert here, not me.
Well, the structure of the oneness model is simple because you know how we have a head, two arms, two legs.
Mm-hmm.
So being born the way I was, actually, people just look like that to me, like upright pentacle or a five-pointed star at Christmas time. And I used to just draw a lot of stars all the time. And my mother would say, honey, why don't you draw something different than stars on a beach, stars on the lawn, stars in a house? And I
That's
was like,
great.
no, those aren't stars. Those are us. So really, those points just represent 5 basic human cultures, according to just my observation. If I were going to synthesize humanity on what we've stored. So, each point represents different forms of intelligence, and that's as simple as it gets. And our core is just our connection to the infinite creator, the unknowable creator that nobody can claim to know, that created the stars, the planets, and us, and everything else.
Right.
And then how do we connect to it? Because that's too abstract. So we need some way to walk a walk after that. So whether Christianity is your path or Buddhism, myself, I'm a Baha'i, we all have very, very complementary, synergistic spiritual principles that fit perfectly together. But socially, they have different laws and ordinances, so you have to find what you resonate to so you can practice the connection. The differences aren't important. And then out of that third ring of the core is us. Like, well, how are you, Jim, so unique? Why are you so gifted talking to people and make people feel at ease, which you do right away? And you're curious, you have questions, you explore, you unfold things, and you help people embrace what you unfold. And that's unusual as well. But that's that's in your third ring. Those are,
Mm-hmm.
and your gift with animals and dogs, not
Right.
everybody
Right.
could have a Rottweiler at home and be
That's
relaxed.
right. That's right. Yes, she's right at my feet right now. So,
So that's basically the oneness model. And then it gets deeper, as you know, because then we have a lot of questions like, well, wait a minute, how do I do this in that case? If we all have
mm-hmm.
these human cultures, what does that mean we get to do? How do we evolve with that?
And there's also that connectivity that we all have,
Mm.
that we're intrinsically connected with one another. We as the human race that here on this earth right now are all connected, and that's interesting to me as well. But that's another topic altogether, I
No, you are
suppose.
so spot on. In fact, really, my hope is that the oneness model would take away us and them thinking. It would give
Mm,
us a premise to demystify one another so that we could actually feel our connectedness, not just from a scientific vantage point,
hmm.
but from a human experience point of view, where no matter who you're with, you could go, oh, I see where they're coming from. This makes sense to me,
That's
you
fantastic.
know?
You just said something that struck me like a tuning fork right between the eyes here, and it was demystify. And that
Mm,
was the reason, and I think this was part of our conversation, because originally I was saying that it was more business, had a more business tilt to it, the podcast, and it was just missing something to me
mm,
personally. And what it was missing was really the another big part of me, which was that spirituality piece. And my hope in doing this and making this shift is to demystify things for people, because the tendency of the human race is to vilify something that they're not familiar with, that's the unknown, and
totally.
to label, make fun, name call, whatever you want to call it, for
Mm,
something that they don't understand or don't know. Well, or you can't see. Well, you can't see the
mm,
wind, but you can feel it. It's
yeah.
there because you can feel it. Same
Mm,
thing goes with some of these gifts that the guests that I speak with have. You don't have to see something to know it's there, right?
absolutely.
You know,
Hmm.
and that's why I decided to take this turn. And it, from my perspective, it's going to be a permanent turn too, um, because I think so many people have gifts that they've, over the years, over the course of time, uh, being around different people, have been pushed down, and it's layers of
Mm,
sediment of life,
hmm.
really, that's just kind of dumped on it and covered it and covered it and covered it, to the point where, every once in a while, and it seems like with the pandemic, everything kind of switched, and there was that inward way of thinking. We have to look inside and before we look outside. And I think there's these little twinges of things that are happening to people that they don't understand, and then they start to doubt it, and they're like, no, I'm, stop thinking that way. So you know what, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because, well, we always start, I feel, in evolution science, no matter what we're talking about, things start in the concrete. And then as they progress and evolve, they move to the abstract. So we have to understand things like in mathematics, 1 + 1 = 2. And in business, that's very important. That was
Right.
your premise and
Hmm.
understanding what makes good business sense, what's smart business. But what we fail to understand is as we evolve and think about being more inclusive, we want not just us to prosper, whoever us is in the moment,
Right.
but everyone to prosper, then we prosper more. So understanding that can't happen if you don't understand spirit is part of business. And in fact, the best businesses are of service.
Agreed.
You know? So
I agree
it's a
100%.
connection. Yeah, I love that. I love that point you brought up. And I love, by the way, the name of your podcast is so great because,
Thank you. Thank you.
you know, that's really what we're doing. You know, every day you're dropping the needle,
Yeah. Yeah,
tuning in,
absolutely.
listening, what's
Yep.
there.
The frequencies, what's
Mm-hmm.
resonating. And
Mm-hmm.
you hit something on the head, because I think oftentimes people are under the misconception that you can't be successful in business and be empathetic, be spiritual, be kind, be any of those things.
Right.
And I think it's the furthest thing from the truth. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely do. And my hope is that people will really start to gravitate towards those types of business that have more of that human element, I guess is
Yeah. We need to understand how that happens though, right? Like how does that apply itself in a business plan? What does that actually look like?
right.
You know, it reminds me, I was reading about the company Honda
Mm-hmm.
when they were first up and running. They were one of the very first companies to create profit sharing, and not just profit sharing for the C-level executives, but like for the janitorial staff as
Oh,
well.
wow.
And so from the beginning, they wanted everyone to prosper in this new business. And so they had a very low turnover rate, a very faithful staff. And they said that's what got them up and running. That's what made them the business they are today. So I think that's like one example of many of if we start to incorporate what does it look like, you know,
Right.
then we
Right.
could start to accept it as our own practice.
And that's very interesting, because I think that I'll use one of the terms that I used previously with the blueprints, or the instruction manual of business,
Mm,
wasn't that necessarily. So that kind of was a break the mold type of situation, where,
mm,
in certain, um, okay, so I'll bring it back to families. Let's say that you have a parent that is an alcoholic or abusive or something like that. You say, well, I'm going to break the chain here, that the life cycle of that, and I'm not going to do that. That stops right here. That's the same thing in business too. That same approach can take place. It can
mm.
happen, and it just takes. I don't know what it takes, other than just maybe a little compassion and that golden rule approach.
Right.
Maybe.
We need a spiritual practice, not a spiritual proclamation. I believe this,
Mm.
that it's a lovely place to begin, plant your flag, and congratulations if someone has achieved some measure of faith in this world. That's a beautiful thing,
Hmm.
not to be diminished. But really, it's all about walking the walk.
Right.
And so, as many areas of our life, business, family, especially, you know, business, so we don't give each other the business,
Right.
you know,
Right. Yes.
uh, and so that happens by default, you know, if we're not really planning to set an intention and walk the path of truth, whatever
There you
that
have it.
is,
The intention.
the
That's the
intention.
key right there. Intention. That's interesting. Yeah, I think that if more and more businesses were to take that approach, I think we wouldn't have some of the issues that we have right now as it relates to out in the world right now. as far as employment and things like that are concerned. It's tough to find people. And I think it's tough to find people for a variety of reasons. And a lot of those reasons are what we're talking about right now, where they're not caring necessarily for the employees. And I don't know. Well, I think it's because they just don't know. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, you don't know what you don't know. And because it's like, it's so simple, it's true though, because
so true.
if you've not been exposed to something like that, you don't know, and you don't know how to change. But yeah, the Honda example would be a great example for people to start following. But I want to talk too about it, because obviously being a medical intuitive as you are is really really cool and really interesting from my perspective. I'm like going, oh my gosh, I wonder what that would be like. You know, I was thinking about that, going, okay, so every time she meets somebody, is she going, is it well, okay, I'll stop right here, and I'm going to back up for a second, because from what my experience has been, I understand it to be a situation where most people that have these gifts, especially the ones that we're talking about that you possess, have an NDE, a near-death experience, that lights up that gift or turns it on. Is that the case with you?
Yeah, it's the case with me. And by the way, I have never considered what you call a gift a gift. I've always thought of it as a malfunction of my brain.
No kidding.
Oh, for sure. I don't think it's very efficient to function this way, but I don't really have anything to compare it to. My near-death experiences I had too, but my mother during her pregnancy was an experiment in medicine. So the drugs were mostly this one super toxic drug she was taking since she was 14 years old. In her era, you didn't ask why. You just obeyed your
Just did.
doctor. They
Right,
were above
right.
questioning. So she was growing more toxic over the years. Her liver was toxic. And then when she was pregnant with me, the level of toxicity crossed the placental barrier, and I became toxic.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
according to her, she said I stopped moving and she stopped feeling me, and she rushed to her doctor, who said I had, in fact, died and that I'd be a stillborn
Oh
or
no.
would abort. But my side of it is just memory of that whole experience. And the toxicity was setting my nerves on fire, because toxic levels of drugs often set your myelin sheath that covers the nerves inflamed. And so it was creating excruciating pain. And you're not supposed to be conscious in utero. You're supposed
Right.
to just stay unconscious.
Yeah, you're just supposed to
Just
be.
be. But I started to become aware from the pain, not from anything else. In my first near-death experience, all I remember is feeling like I was passing out from the pain periodically. And then the last time that happened, I evidently passed away, which coincided with the doctor saying there was no heartbeat or brain activity. So, but then I found myself in the light that we are aware of and have heard so often described as a term for the creator. And so began my first near-death experience, which was about humanity, not about myself. And
Oh my.
so you see, my job started really early.
I
And
guess so.
I had no choice. I was on the clock, before I could have my first cry. But
oh my
then I
gosh.
had a second near-death experience at the end of her second trimester, which coincided with her last trip to the emergency visit to her doctor, who definitely pronounced me dead. And so there's much of a story. I actually am finishing a book. It's actually being edited right now, and I'm going to share a little bit of that story in that book. But it's really about us, and it's not. If people are interested in why I became a medical intuitive, it's not really so much about that, though it's there. It's more about us and the things that I've taken away from those experiences about everybody. So
Wow, wow,
that's
wow.
how that's really how everything began.
Well, you're clearly a slacker.
Yeah.
that happened when you in utero. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I have to say that I thought that I had heard that, but was like, yeah, you know what? I don't know that I did hear that correctly. So I'm glad I asked, because I
It's
can tell you
weird.
right now. Well, you know what? It is that what the feeling that I had was just like my heart sank when you said that. It was just like,
Oh,
oh my gosh, how awful. I was, just how awful.
yeah.
And how
What a way to
frightening that
start.
might. Well, I mean,
Mm,
how frightening that must have been even for your mom, and then you know,
especially.
yeah. I mean, holy
Mm,
cow, that's something. That's
what a
amazing, though.
privilege. What a privilege I had to hear it from her lips, her side of it.
Mm.
Because really, I was ashamed of it my whole life. I mean, that just made me odd. So I tried very hard to just get good grades, be as normal can possibly look, and just get on with things. But it just kept interfering with quote unquote normalcy.
Oh my gosh.
Like if you go to the grocery store and you see someone sick in aisle 5, but you're only 7 years old yourself, what are you supposed to do about that? Um,
Right,
you
right.
know,
Shh,
it's
shh, shh, be quiet. Be quiet. Don't say anything.
right, right,
Yeah, right.
exactly. So
Boy.
just like everybody, though, um, this shouldn't be mystified more than anybody else's design. And just because it came about in this way, everyone has hardships, everyone has anomalies, and everyone has gifts. That's
And
why we're here.
yes, and that's really interesting because yes, you're right. And I say that to people regularly when well, I don't have anything to complain about when there's such and so somebody else has got it worse than me. You always hear that, somebody say that,
Hmm.
which is diminishing their feelings and their pain and their experience at that point. And I'm really quick to point out to my friends and people in my circles that, hey, that's relative. What you experience, it was painful to you,
Right.
and don't diminish that. And that's an important thing
Hmm.
for you in your life and your path that you're on. So yeah, I say that regularly, and I do also subscribe to your philosophy that everyone has a gift, a unique gift. Because and it's interesting to me to hear you, what I call a gift. You were just like, I almost as it sounded like you didn't want it or didn't like it.
Definitely not. And it's not, I think, also in the era of me growing up, it wasn't known, and it would have made everyone uncomfortable. My
I
parents
can see that.
continuously said, keep this between you and us.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't talk
So
about it. Don't talk about it. Yeah.
don't talk about it, and don't focus on what you see. It's not your business.
Mm.
So To answer your question, when I'm in public, I mind my business. If someone hasn't made an
Really?
appointment with me, I trust that there are millions of ways for people to get help, healing, support, love. It doesn't have to come from me.
Right. It's not your responsibility to do that.
No,
That would be
nor are
tough,
they
though.
without. Yeah,
Yeah,
how so?
that would be really. I think that would be a difficult thing to come to terms with initially. That
Hmm.
when I don't want to say saddled with, but when you have that, how hard would that be to not want to interject? You know what you're seeing, what you're feeling. You know, how would knowing who I am, which is the ADHD prince, the guy that would interrupt anybody in the middle of, hey, I'm giving a lecture here, but I've got a question. I've got something more important to say than your topic, Doctor So and so, and it's not. It's just me being a goof. But I would have a difficult time not just, hey, you know what, you should go, whatever it may have been. So
Mm. Mm,
how was that? I mean, was that a learned process or a learned skill, a learned situation
definitely.
for you? Okay.
Well, I used to actually just get ill, so I get overwhelmed. There's a lot
Oh,
going on all the time, a lot going on all the time.
yeah.
So I would, uh, my mother was very funny, very extreme person, and delightfully sometimes and difficult in others. And I went to the grocery store with her one time. I think I was, yeah, probably around in second grade. And it was summertime. I was healthy. I was excited to go to the store. I go to the store. I see bruises on someone,
Mm.
and I know that they're being abused at home.
Uh,
I look in another aisle. I see someone, and it looks like they've got tumors. I go in another aisle. It looks like someone is struggling with grief and depression. And when I left, I had double pneumonia. So I
oh my
walk in there
gosh.
healthy. I'm wheezing as we get home. And then I go to the emergency room and I have double pneumonia. And this was what my mother said to me. That is the last time you go to the grocery store with me.
That was the big takeaway. You're never coming with
Yeah,
me
yeah.
again.
So it's
Oh
like
no.
I couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't figure it out. And I didn't even know I was taking in my experience of other people. I just thought that's life.
So, as far as being a medical intuitive, can you maybe break that down
Hmm.
for everyone?
Well, I can only say what works for me. I have gone through a lot of different stages. Originally, uh, I worked just sort of freestyle, like as I said, my professors or the teachers. There was this one surgeon that he unloaded all his mystery cases onto me. So I would go and just look
Mm.
at them. He would just say, what tests should I run? That's all he wanted to know.
Oh.
So that was a pleasure. That was fun. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I can use this for good. This is exciting. And he wanted me to be his protege, come back. He was from New Zealand. But I didn't want to be his protege because then
Mm-hmm.
I'd be limited how I could maybe help people.
Right.
So over time, what I did is and today I do the same thing. I created charts where I use anatomical and biological figures, different structures. And so I draw people in 6 different diagrams, just do a quick sketch. And I ask people what their questions are, like, why are they coming to me?
Mm.
Because I want to be useful. I don't want to be a parlor trick. I just want to be
Yeah.
helpful, you know? And
Yeah.
so I leave it to them what we're going to look at. And I mind my business the rest of the time, most of the time.
Unless there's
Sometimes something comes
something.
up. Yeah. And I'll say, do I have your permission to address something you haven't addressed. And then I
Mm,
might say, if I were you, I would go back to that endocrinologist and I would ask them to test this, this, and this. And
interesting.
it's a joy. It's just a joy. But I keep it simple because I only have an hour. You know,
Right.
people are deep. I could draw a person, stay with one person for the rest of my life and never get bored.
Really? Wow.
Definitely.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
People are incredible.
So when people come to you and and they can book a session with you at www.julieburnswalker.com, which I would recommend, by the way. But when they come to you, are they looking for, let's say, are they typically lost and they're looking for their life's purpose? Or I'm sure there's a variety of reasons, but that just kind of came to me right when I was starting to ask the question, where what am I meant to do here? Why am I here? Do people ever get there with you on their questioning?
A lot.
Really?
So
Okay.
everything, you're right. It's everything. Sometimes people come and talk about like if they were trained to do something or come from a particular belief system or paradigm, but their design is the opposite of that, then they'll try everything they can in their powers to follow through the way they grew up or the way they were designed or the way they were programmed, I should say. And then they may come to a fork in the road or hit the wall. And then they'll come to see me because they're like, "Am I crazy? Because I hate my job," or they'll
Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
they'll be like, or I people say that I have to live here, but I hate this place. Is this me being stubborn, or am I meant to prosper in a different climate? Or, should I go back to school, or can I
Right.
quit this job? All kinds of things, because what it really distills into is this really my purpose? Because if it is, it sure feels wrong.
Right. Right.
And, then we're off
Okay.
to the fun stuff.
Yes. So I was just going to ask, so
Yeah.
is it then your belief that you feel when you are on the right path for your life, that you can feel that?
Yes. No one has to tell you when you're there. You would do it for free. You would do it for free all day, every day. And that's how you know you're close, the closest to doing what you're designed for. I mean, if a bird was raised by the ocean with fish who are always blaming it for complaining about having matted feathers and complaining about eating plankton or anything else, the
I hate
truth
fish.
is, yeah, the bird is meant to fly. And so no amount of training can distort the design of us. We know better. And the minute we're exposed to our element, that is when we literally soar.
Wow.
But most people will talk themselves out of it, to tell you the truth. They're afraid because they grew up with an education that came not from truth, but like in Oneness Model
Hmm.
vernacular, core lore, mythology about our
Right.
reality.
And that's going to bring me to my next question then. So when people are in a session with you, do you then, are you able to help them identify that? And if so, their purpose and what their, answer their question that we were talking about earlier. And then do you also provide them with the how to get there, like the
Hmm.
how to help them make that move or jump?
Well, I mean, Jim, you have to remember, in my job, I know nothing and you know everything.
Mm,
So I look at the person and they show those steps. So I actually draw people in their own version of the oneness model. I draw them in that model. So I can even show them what puts them in survival and where they prosper. I can show them what puts them in emotions. I can show them what puts them in being super cerebral, but no core. I can show
Mm.
them. And every time my job is to really pay attention and be articulate and draw them accurately and not have an opinion. And as soon as I show them what they show me, every single time they let out a sound. They're like,
Really?
"Wow, how did you know this? This is my secret. Wait a minute, what?" It's
Mm.
really exciting when you see someone feel the impact of being mirrored.
Wow. I bet you can just see everything change. Everything when that is, it's like something like an animal that has been caged up for so long and then released and just takes off. That's got to be pretty
Yes,
cool.
and not everybody does what comes up. A lot of people
Mm.
say, "Thank you, but no," or they're upset and they're like, "I'm leaving. I don't want to hear about this. It's not true. It's not going to happen."
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I can remember someone who this woman came and she wasn't happy in her relationship with her boyfriend. And all I did is tell her, be very careful. I don't think that this relationship will endure for long, but you're about to have a child as a result of it. You
Ooh.
better be very careful because you will be connected to this person for life. And she was very upset. She left the session, didn't want to talk to me again. That was
Mm.
that. And so we didn't talk for a very long time. And I happened to be traveling for a workshop. I saw her at the workshop and she introduced herself and she's like, "You probably don't remember me, but I would like to introduce you to my 7-year-old son."
Oh my goodness.
She said, "seven
Oh
years
my
ago, you
goodness.
told me, or 8 years ago, you told me, be careful." And she said, "And I did not believe you. And I was
Wow.
upset and I didn't want it to be true." And she's like, "And we split up as soon as I got pregnant."
Oh my gosh.
But after that, she listened intensely to herself from that day on. She didn't need me, she needed herself.
That's amazing. That
So
really is
beautiful.
amazing.
Mm.
So before we get into the musical questions here, I'd also like to know what you have going on right now that you'd like to talk about. Is there something happening
Mm.
that you'd like to
Mm.
discuss?
Uh, well, I guess, true to my embryonic personality, I'm still concerned about human beings. I still worry about us, if you will. Uh, Hopefully healthier, but I must confess I still feel that way. And so I'm always looking for ways that maybe could be a bit of a life hack for people, and they don't
Mm.
have to have an appointment with me. And they can maybe see themselves and their families and their loved ones, and also the ones they don't want to love, the ones
Mm.
that are giving them real hardship in life, to understand them better. So I am putting out a book about identifying your purpose and really becoming what you were meant to be. And I'm excited about it because, it's not really, it's not like a whole volume of, I'm not trying to download things onto people,
Right.
but I just want people to have little morsels that they could go, "Oh, wow, wait, that's me. I relate to that."
I love
And
that.
things they can take away and apply right away. So I'm
That's
excited about that.
awesome. That's fantastic. When
Thanks,
is that going to be
Dan.
out?
Well, I am not sure. Like I said, it's at the editors right now, and I'm waiting for them to bring me in. They want to do it as an audiobook.
Oh,
So
fantastic. I
that's
love
exciting.
audiobooks.
Yeah, you know, that's another kind of uniqueness about us in the States. We've stopped reading hardcover books to a
Yeah.
tremendous percentage, but we're listening to books. So we're still getting it in.
Yeah, you know what? And there are people that like to have that book in their hand and turn the
Mm,
pages, and they like that feel.
mm,
And I can go either way, quite honestly, but I would prefer the audiobook. And a lot of that has to do with eyesight. So in the
yeah,
fatigue that comes from reading, it's just like, oh,
real.
I'm ready to, I'm going to fall asleep because it drains me to read. And and quite honestly, I love it. I was going to ask you if you were planning on doing the narration for the book, because I love when the authors narrate the books, because you
Mm,
actually get to hear their tone and you can feel their intention as they read it versus somebody else that may be guessing what their intention is. And like, okay, our friend Jen
yes.
has a wonderful speaking voice. She does
Oh,
voiceovers and
she
everything.
does. She's
She's
amazing.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's what that's the first thing that I noticed and I
Mm.
loved about her books. I bought a book, and this is the truth. I bought a book because I was going to one of her workshops and I wanted her to sign the book for me. I
Aw.
already had it on audio and listened to it 2 or 3 times. And I said, I'm,
Mm.
I'm going to be fanboy here, but you're my number one author, according to Audible, by like 3 times. Oh, look at it. I got a little thumbs up. Yeah. Spirits agreeing with me. Yeah. But it was so true. And she just thought that was, you know, hilarious. Not cute is what she said, but it was,
It's
I love that. I
wonderful.
just love
Yeah,
that
I
though.
love that too. Me
That's
too.
good stuff.
Yeah, that's the plan. That is the plan.
I love that. Awesome. Well, good
Thank
luck. I
you.
can't wait
Thank
to
you.
see that, and I hope you do read it because I think you have wonderful speaking voice, and trust that you really do. And I think it would be wonderful to hear.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, that's my hope because at least I know what words I wrote and what I meant and how I
That's
want to say
right.
them.
That's right. Exactly right. And I can't wait. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Well, okay. So, as anyone can tell you that's listened to the podcast before, that this is the section when I ask some musical questions. And this is pillar
Okay.
4 of the show. And I mention this regularly. Music is the tie that binds. And I believe everyone has a
Yes.
soundtrack that accompanies their life if they just take a moment to think about it. So, are you ready for some
Mm.
musical questions?
Oh, yes.
All right. So, what was the first song you fell in love with from the radio?
Mm, it's really hard. I know you were telling me this, and I have to pick one, but one is so hard because, like you, music has actually accompanied me in life like a best friend.
Mm,
So I would say there are many times in life when all I had was music. So I love many genres of music. I'm very young. I noticed music. My parents took my siblings and I to concerts right
mm,
away. So we
awesome.
were exposed to every kind of every genre of music, you know, jazz, rock, reggae, you name it. Uh,
Really? Awesome.
everything. So I'm going to tell you that my first songs that when I heard them, they hit me so profoundly emotionally. Now, remember, I think I was 5 or 6.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect.
you know, but I heard the soundtrack to Sir with Love.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I went, my mother took me to see the movie and it blew me away. The soundtrack did. And that it was entitled To Sir with Love. It was by the singer. Lulu. And I can't believe I remembered that. That
That's
is
wonderful.
wild. But I also had the first album of Sam and Dave, uh,
Oh,
Soul Man. And I
yes.
remember just thinking to myself,
Yes.
why does this make me feel so good on a bad day? I need to
Because it's
listen to
awesome.
this.
That's
Yes.
why. Because it's freaking awesome. Oh, love that. That's
Yep.
great. Yeah, as soon as you started saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, we are two peas in the pod because music was really my best friend a lot of times.
Mm.
I didn't have any brothers or sisters, but what I had was music and I had my imagination. So I'd be listening to these songs, thinking of, how I would be received on stage singing these, belting them out and everything.
Oh, you saw
Yeah,
yourself as a performer.
absolutely
Yes,
did.
I love
Absolutely
it.
did.
Another part of your blueprint.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, for the longest time, growing up, I wanted to be a doctor. So for Christmas and birthdays, I would get things that were medical related, believe it or not, like a stethoscope and blood pressure cuff. And
Oh,
yeah, so
that
that
is
was
so sweet.
it was my big present was to get that. And,
Mm,
but music was always there. And I made a choice pretty early on in school that music was where I was going to go, and that was my pursuit was music. I went to school for vocal performance. I used to sing opera, musical theater, and things like that too. So
amazing.
yeah, yeah. But you
Amazing.
that hit me like, oh my gosh, we're connected in another way.
Yes,
So that was kind of
we
cool.
are.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Love it. Second question I have for you. Did your family have a song that everyone would just belt out on road trips or if you're going on vacation somewhere or anything like that when you were growing up?
I have to say no, but
Okay.
here's what I'm going to tell you. I told you my mom, she was a larger than life persona. She loved show tunes, okay? She
Oh,
loved
yeah.
Broadway. And
My mom, too.
and she would play them so loud, that and Aretha Franklin. So I could hear it from my elementary school classroom.
Get out of
That's how
here.
loud she blasted it. We
Get
were
out.
3 blocks away, and all the kids would look at me. If they heard Aretha,
They
they
knew it
looked
was
at
your
me and they
mom.
were like, your mom, your mom. And I could
Oh,
gauge what kind of a day it was going to be by what she was playing. If she was playing the soundtrack to Company, I might be in trouble. If she was playing the soundtrack, it just depended on what she was playing. I knew her mood.
oh my gosh. So, okay. So there's another one. My mom
Okay.
and musical theater. Absolutely. And when you were saying you're growing up, my family, it was actually more my mom and my grandparents. I remember going to see Fiddler on the Roof, Hello Dolly with Carol Channing. I've seen
Holy
a
smokes.
lot.
The big stuff.
Yeah, who was the for Fiddler on the Roof? Zero Mostel, I think was who it was that
Okay.
was the fiddler. So that was that I wow
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's
No
something.
choice. We had no choice. We know all the words to every soundtrack, Zorba the Greek.
Oh
You
yeah.
name it, we know it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. My mom went on a tear there for a while with they're playing our song. And
Uh-huh.
I knew that backwards and forwards,
Mhm.
man. I
Mhm.
could wow. Incredible.
Oh,
So,
definitely. Cats. Oh, yeah.
oh
All of it.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll tell you just one quick story, side story.
Please.
When I was in Atlanta, I lived in Atlanta for a period of time, and I was doing
So
some
did I.
singing. Oh, did you really? Yeah. So I was working in Buckhead as a waiter. That's
Mhm.
what most artists do. They wait tables or bartend or something like that. And I worked at a place called the Buckhead Opera House, which was a restaurant. And they wanted me to sing. So I started singing there. And we had a regular couple that came in and said, "Oh, I really want to hear something from Phantom of the Opera." And I was just like, okay, well, that's not really my style, but sure. And they bought the libretto of Phantom of the Opera for me to learn a song and sing it. So I did for them, and they were just over the moon when I finally brought it to them to sing. So it was cool. So
Wow. I wish I could
anyway.
have heard that.
Oh gosh, I wish I could sing still. I ended up ruining my voice a few years ago because I coach baseball too, and bad weather
Mm.
through wind and all that stuff, and was screaming to instructions, not at anybody. But anyway, we'll get back off of the little sidetrack. See, this is what I was saying. ADHD, shiny object, I'll go.
I
It
love
doesn't take
it.
me.
You're interested in many things. Don't
I
stop it.
am. Well, I
Yeah, you
can't.
are.
It's a
Don't
little late
stop it.
now for that, but okay. So as far as hype songs, do you have a few favorite hype songs that are on your playlist that you go out and crush the day?
Well, you may not think of them as hype songs, but they work for me. I don't know, lately, I think it's the change of seasons. Then my hype songs change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Anything Little Dragon right now. I love her. I love her voice. I've been listening to Air, gone back to listening to Air. Um, their um, their album Talkie with Alone in Kyoto and Cherry Blossom Girl.
Ooh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, Krongbin, if you know them, I love them. They've been my lately as the seasons change. If you'd asked me during the summer, it would have been different.
Really, really. What was your summer? Can you
Um,
remember one?
yeah, in the summer I was listening to this Japanese jazz vocalist named May Simone's. And I was listening to Joji, his song Daylight, um, Frank Ocean's Moon River.
Oh
That's
wow.
where I've
Okay.
been. Yeah.
Cool. You are eclectic in your musical taste. That's wonderful. I love that. I do.
You love what touches you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to jump around here just a little bit. So going back into
Okay.
high school, and I apologize. I
Yes.
probably should have done that in chronological
Jump
order, but
around.
that's another good song. But that's I forgot who sings that. But anyway, um, in high school, did you
Mhm.
have a favorite song that was kind of like your belted out when you were going around with your friends?
I'm the worst person to ask this question to. I was really shy in high school. I mostly was in the music department or in the art department.
Mm.
And my music taste was at the time I was listening to Chick Corea with Airto and Flora
Ooh,
Purim, and I was obsessed with the song Spain. And I still am. I love that.
I know that
Um,
song. El Giro sings that song, and it's
yes,
amazing.
it's amazing. I think I was stuck there. I had friends who we were all in the music departments together. We were listening to like Dave Brubeck. I mean,
Oh yes,
you
yeah.
know, we
Oh my
we were
gosh.
just really old people in young bodies.
I'll tell you. So that's so funny. I somebody asked me that question, and
Mm,
with the high school belting it, the music out, and I said, well, it really depends on who I was with, and what do you mean? I said I
yes.
had different groups of friends. So I had friends that were more into sports. Then I was
Mhm.
also into music. I was in the band and choir and everything. So we had a completely different song list. or,
Totally.
playlist. And, we would listen to Gino Vanelli, Al Jarreau, George Benson, Earth, Wind and Fire,
Yes.
all of those,
Yes.
those things.
Yes.
And then the other side was listening to Sammy Hagar, Motley Crue, AC/DC, all of those songs. And I liked them both. Van Halen, I graduated in 1984 from high school. So Jump, and, that's when, Motley Crue was really, really popular then too. But yeah, it was the same way in my introduction to big band music from my grandfather, who played clarinet and saxophone. So yeah,
Wow,
no, no,
that's
no, no.
amazing. Oh, I can't forget the Police. They kind
Oh
of
yes,
ingrained themselves on me. I think I was from the very beginning,
yeah.
from Roxanne onwards, I think I was just hooked.
Zenyatta Mandata.
That's
Yes,
it.
yes,
See, look
yes.
at that. You're back there right now.
Yes. Well, see, that's the whole thing about these musical questions. And, you
Yeah.
know, people, if they don't think about it, they're just like, these are just, that's ridiculous. I don't know. I don't know. But then when you start to think about it, all of a
Hmm.
sudden you're in the hallway of school and you've got this song in your head and you're walking through the hallways, and yeah, so that's what this was designed to do. So yay, we did it.
Yeah.
Well, so in college, going into college, we're from high school into college, did your musical tastes change, or have they pretty much
Yes.
stayed the same? Well, they did.
Well,
Okay,
I
great.
think I in college I really became fascinated with more abstract soundtracks, Maurice Jarre, looking at like soundtracks to like with Philip Glass, or the
Yes.
soundtrack to Diva, or the soundtrack to the Emerald Forest, like where people were listening to ambience rather than just a melody.
Hmm.
And that intrigued me. I also was simultaneously obsessed with reggae music because somehow
Love
it let
that.
me get through life. And so I was a big Bob Marley fan,
Peter
Jimmy
Tosh.
Cliff,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Peter Tosh. Oh yeah,
Toots.
I sang out Jimmy Cliff at the top of my lungs.
Oh my
Of
gosh.
course, driving,
You are
alone in my
my
car.
type of person. Gosh almighty. We are kindred spirits. I
Yes,
swear.
we are.
I swear. And this is not being funny. My God, this is so. Philip Glass. I did. Speaking of Philip Glass, I did a series with the making of the representative of Planet 8, where I was Durg. When I
Oh, wow.
yes, so yeah, I know Philip Glass. Actually, the gentleman is the head of the opera department now. His name's Harry Silverstein at DePaul University.
Oh,
Was a
wow.
director for Philip Glass's. He did a few operas with Philip
Mm.
Glass, and Harry's
Incredible.
incredibly talented and just a great guy. He brought the first full scale opera to DePaul University, which was The Marriage of Figaro, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. So it was wonderful.
Wow, that's incredible. Wait, is
Yeah.
that recorded somewhere?
Um, Boy, that's a great question. Back then, it may have been on VHS that they then transferred to cassette tape. And I
Okay.
had, believe it or not, I had copies of that for a number of years, and then they were ruined in a flood. So it was,
Mm.
yeah, it's
Mm.
kind of one of those,
Ah,
yeah, bummer deals. But anyway, do you have a guilty,
fascinating.
well, yeah, that's my life matches my musical taste. It's eclectic, that's for sure. Uh,
I'm right there with you.
it sounds like it. I love it though.
Yep.
Gosh,
Hmm.
do you have a song on your playlist that is a guilty pleasure song that if somebody else would be like, "Are you kidding me? That's on your playlist."
Most Def's Umi says.
What?
That song, yeah, it's on my playlist. It slays me when I need it. It's there. I don't know. Sometimes it just takes me to what's important in life and nothing else is important. It strips everything away for me. I love that song. And I also lately have everything Robert Glasper playing on my
Mm,
playlist. Uh, in My Element, that album, so good.
I'm going to check that out. In
It's
My
autumn. I
Element.
can't help myself. It's a different season.
You know, and so it's interesting that you say that. My musical tastes seem to follow the change of season too, until it gets
Mm.
to the middle of winter. Let's not
Mhm.
even say the middle of winter, like February. Then I'm like, I'm willing the warm weather to come. That's when I start playing
Harry
more.
Styles.
I really go with the reggae then, and
Oh,
Buffett
okay.
and all of. I'm looking for
Uh-huh.
beach music, that
Okay.
sort of thing. That's what
Uh-huh.
I start to push for. But yeah. Anyway, um, so if there were three songs that you could come up with that you believe would impact the way people think or feel about the world or around
Oof.
them,
Oof.
what might those songs be? Or even if it's just one song.
Oh. Oh, that's so easy. Probably we'd go to the Beatles, go classic. All you need is love.
Oh my gosh. That's a good one.
I mean, if we have to do it and we've just got one and we're gonna do it together, I guess that's the one that'll let us do it together.
Oh my gosh. That's a good one. I haven't heard that one yet. Seriously, that's a good one. I had one Beatles song early on, but it was not All You Need Is Love. Holy cow, that's fantastic. Do you have others that you had in mind? If I was
Oh gosh, everything Lauren Hill.
oh
Everything Lauren Hill. Um, the whole miseducation. Oh, there isn't a wrong song.
yeah.
Um, boy, that's a tough order. I would say I don't know if I'd go vintage or stay today, but maybe I'd have to recommend people listen to Mae Simone's.
All right.
Give her a
Well,
try.
well, I'm going to. That's for sure. I will definitely do that. Okay, here's the last one. And this
Okay.
one is really it's actually one of my favorite questions too. Because there are songs that you hear that ring so true that they can stop you in your tracks and the lyrics sound like they were written either specifically for you or by you. What song is that for you?
Hmm. Lyrics. Hmm. You're not asking easy questions, are you? Well, I guess I'd go back to maybe I would do early Joni Mitchell.
Ooh, interesting.
Hmm.
Joni Mitchell. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's childhood, but that would be, yeah, maybe I haven't evolved very much, but I'd have to go back to
No. It's that can be a tough one because it depends on where you're at in your life. It depends on your mood, depends on if something's happened recently in your life that's impacted you that you go, oh,
Oh,
okay.
I know. Okay, it would be Lenny Kravitz, Raised Vibration.
Ooh, okay. I like Lenny.
How can you not?
Let Love Rule is
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that song. Raise vibration. Gosh. Now, I can guarantee you that you are the first person in 22 episodes. Now, I don't have a ton of episodes, but I have a ton of music that comes out of this. You're the first person that's brought up Lenny Kravitz. You are. And I'm a big fan, and I try not to influence people's choices in this, but I have quite a few Lenny Kravitz albums. So that's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thanks for asking these questions. I wouldn't have thought about these things
I
ever
just
if you
love
hadn't
it.
pulled them out of the attic.
I love it. Oh, speaking of attic, Billy Joel, one of my favorite artists, has an album called Songs in the Attic. If you haven't listened to it, if you're a Billy Joel fan, you should check that out.
Thanks for that.
Well, it's just about time to cue the music for today's episode, but don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Drop the Needle podcast to stay up to date and on our latest episodes. I'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Drop the Needle podcast. I'd also like to thank our very special guest, Ms. Julie Burns-Walker, for sharing everything today. Thank you, Julie.
And thank you, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. I could keep going on and on. And I invite you all to head over to our show notes where there's going to be a link to today's playlist. And there's also going to be a link in how to get in touch with Julie, which I already mentioned previously, but it's www.julieburnswalker.com. And you'll be able to get in touch with her. And you'll see she's got a list of her books. She's got meditations on her in the shop section of her website, which are fantastic, by the way, and we didn't even get to those, doggone it. So I apologize for that, Julie. I should definitely have gotten that to you, but
oh, no worries.
And by the way, listen to them. They're just fantastic. All right, my Drop the Needle posse, like Billy Joel says, from the highs to the lows to the end of the show, this is the end of our show. Until next time, this is Jim Alstott wishing you infinite health and happiness and the perfect playlist for your life. Thank you again for being the best part of us. Catch you next time.